So here's a group of people, and they're highly motivated, enthusiastic, and willing to take ownership for what they want to achieve together. And now they're at a meeting. Now what happens? Now when people at the meeting, one thing that they have in common is that they're different from each other. Nobody is exactly the same. So people bring their culture, their background, their belief systems, their preferences, their allergies, their sensitivities. They all bring that to the table. And we all handle those things in a different way. So our allergies, for example, we all handle them in a different way. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. But here we are together in the meeting. And I'm talking and you interrupt me. And because you interrupt me, I'm slightly irritated, just for a moment. I don't like it to be interrupted. Or you say, hey, listen, we need to work more structured. Well, I think, well, we don't need to work more structured. We need to have more air, more space to have a more in-depth conversation with each other. And structure will take that away. If we use holacracy, for example, it can be rigid for me, while it can work perfectly for you. And we're different than that. Or I want to express my feelings because I don't feel too well, and you want to stick to the business, and we're different in that. And I want to socialize. I just want to make fun and have fun together and socialize, and you don't want that. You want to stick to the business. So we're different, and those differences, we handle them in a different way. So usually we discard them. We just forget about them. We notice for a moment a slight irritation, slight frustration, and then we just forget about it. But what happens in the background? All of us, as human beings, have what I call a personal irritation and frustration measurement instrument. It's an intrinsic instrument. We all have it. You don't know it. I can't tell you where it is, but we have it. Meaning that when I'm in a meeting opening and I'm saying something and you interrupt me, somewhere inside me I notice that and I place one saving stamp in my irritation and frustration booklet for you. Because we all have these, together with that measurement instrument comes booklets, and the booklets are empty, just like at the supermarket when you save stamps for cutlery or pots and pans. But now you save stamps about irritation and frustration. And those stamps are usually so, small, to call it that way. We can't just all put them on the table and talk about it. This just would be ridiculous. We wouldn't have the time to discuss content. So we don't do that. And besides that, most of us grow up in a conflict-avoiding culture. We want to have a good time together. We believe in what we're doing. We don't want our personal ego stuff to interfere with what we're doing. We want to serve the purpose. So we neglect our feelings, our irritations, our frustrations. But here's what happened. And I've seen this so many times in the past 30 years that I'm coaching teams and organizations. What happens is that we do collect stamps every time we have a slight or maybe a larger or even a large irritation and frustration. We do collect stamps, and the stamps can be for one person, but the stamps can also be for the ineffectiveness of a meeting, for example, or that the meeting is not done in the way that I prefer, like it's too structured or not structured enough for my liking. So then I collect stamps for the meeting. And what happens is that the fuller the booklets get, the more full the booklets get with stamps, something happens. I kind of lose my enthusiasm a little bit at first. That's what I notice. Or I kind of question if this is the right team for me to be in. Or maybe I don't have the right skills or the right personality or the right traits to serve this purpose or to be in this group. Maybe I start noticing that I kind of withdraw my energy, my enthusiasm, or so those are all symptoms that happen that indicate that I have collected stamps, usually very, very unconsciously, and that the booklets are getting fuller and fuller and fuller. Now, it all depends on how you handle those stamps, how you learn to do that. Like I said, most people grow up in a conflict-avoiding culture. So meaning that whatever they feel, they might not even be aware of what they feel, because most of the time they think rather than that they feel. They're not aware of their irritations and frustrations. And when they are, they just throw them over the shoulder, so to speak, and then forget about them most of the time. And that's a healthy attitude, apart from when the booklets get fuller and fuller and fuller, and then all of a sudden, you start to notice that because of the symptoms I just mentioned. What I just described is a common process that has to do with the fact that we as a human species have not been able to learn how to handle differences very well. I think we've learned so much. I mean, science and psychology, and we've learned so much. We know about each other, we know about ourselves, and we know about organizations, how they can work. But the vision of all of that and the day-to-day practice, since we are human beings with feelings and thoughts and everything, and with automatic processes like collecting stamps, irritation and frustration stamps, we haven't learned to handle that very, very well. And it's so important to do that. What you notice is there's going to be a gap between the vision, between what is possible, and the day-to-day reality, where people lose their motivation, lose their enthusiasm, and lose their power, are not joining their forces in the way they can. How can you bridge that gap?